Hey everyone, big thanks for supporting the podcast. We really do appreciate it. If you want to hear more from us, hit the subscribe button or press the bell icon for future updates.
So we're here, we're going to discuss today about grief in the workplace. It's something that for me is really personal because of my experiences with grief over the years. And I know like yourself, you've also unfortunately, experienced a similar type thing. So I think really, it's the best person to speak to about it.
We kind of connected from the very start, didn't we? From meeting each other. And it wasn't till a few weeks after I'd started and we were chatting, we went for that nice walk, didn't we?
Yeah.
That we actually realised how much we had in common.
Yeah.
And this is obviously one of the unfortunate similarities in our life that we have, is that we've both lost somebody very close.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's hard to, without saying that cliche of, oh, you don't understand if you haven't lost someone.
Yeah.
It's hard to relay how it can feel to someone if they haven't been through it. I think that's probably why, or one of the reasons that we bonded.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think,
met.
like you say, if a person's lucky enough to have never lost someone, who is an immediate, like family member or a really best close friend, like you can't relate as such. You can sympathise, but you can relate. But for a bit of context, I guess, my personal experience of it would be when I lost my mum. So it was a weird one really, because I'd started here at Superfly and then we found out my mum was ill with terminal cancer 3 months after I started. So it was like I'd sort of moved into a new job. At the time I was only 22.
Yeah.
And
it sounds daft to say bad timing, because there would never be good timing, but that's a real kicker.
It was weird timing. And as well, like it was in 2020 and COVID. God. I think like that whole thing going on was just like a crazy time for obviously everyone, but I think for my experience it was solely around
like nothing else would have mattered at that time. It was your mum and nothing else.
Exactly. And I think it's like where to relate it to work, I was so worried about like what was going to happen, as in obviously like in my personal life my mum was the most important thing happening at that point with what she went through. And I think with work I was in this like panic sort of state of how am I gonna manage this. I've just started my new job, they don't really know me, this terrible thing's happened and is happening, and I don't know what the outcome is going to be, and I don't know what the hell's going to happen in the next few months and stuff like that. So that's for the start of that was my like experience with dealing with something on a really personal level at work during a time when I'd got my new job. I was so excited about it.
And you want to set a great first example, and not that would affect you, something that profound happening, but it's going to throw you off kilter a little bit. You're not going to be your normal self, are you? Obviously.
Well, no.
So you want to portray this great first impression of who you are. But
exactly. And it took a massive hit, and then unfortunately my mum passed away like 4 months after that.
It was quick, wasn't it, for you?
It was really quick, and I think it's like it'll be her 4-year anniversary literally in a couple of weeks. And I think it's just, I think I want to talk about this on the podcast, because from then and that happening to now and my experience with grief has been a whole journey. And obviously like with grief your life doesn't stop, it don't get, you can't pause the things that you have going on alongside of that. And
that's the hard thing.
Exactly. And the big main one of your life is work, you
spend a lot of time there, and
exactly. And
you want to form relationships with people, and like I said earlier, it does affect who you are. You're not necessarily your best self when you're going through something else that is just far superseding anything work related.
It's such like a roller coaster of emotions going through that, but you still know that. I know people's experiences of grief are so different, and I think with me, work has always been really important to me, and I think even with that happening, it was still. It is now still so important, and it was then. Yeah.
It's a focus as well, and as much as you don't want a distraction, you kind of do want a distraction because it's not healthy to think about it constantly. Yeah. So it's nice to be away from it.
Yeah, everyone's different, but I think for me personally, work really helped, I guess, in that sense of distraction and normality, because your normality is, your world is completely rocked.
Yeah, like, and it will never be the same.
No, absolutely not. And I was really close to my mum personally, and that was a huge, like undescribable loss for me.
Yeah,
and I think work really. Luckily, we work for, and Nick and Charlie. Who
it sounds cliche, but
we're really lucky.
Yeah,
in the fact that the way they handled the situation, the time off that they allowed me to have, and time for counselling, and flexible working and stuff like that. And I think with how they are as people, they're genuinely decent, lovely people.
Yeah, agree.
Who really care.
Yeah, they are. They're very compassionate, and it's so important because, if somebody has experienced a loss, it's not their fault. They don't want to be in that situation.
No, exactly.
And, if you as an employer, if you're not compassionate with somebody in a time like that, that's probably the hardest thing that they will ever go through.
Yeah.
That could be a really valuable employee with so much to bring to the company, and if you're not there for them when they need you, that's it. When you've got your head together, you'll just turn around and think, I don't owe you anything. I'm moving on to somewhere else. You could lose that valuable employee for not supporting them.
Yeah, the resentment will always be there. But I think my experience versus, so many other people's experiences of grief, when dealing with grief and experiencing it and then going back to work, some people's experiences of that are just horrific.
Yeah. And like you say, every grief, every loss is totally different. The relationship that you had with that person, it could be even baby loss. I know somebody that's experienced that, and they were not supported by their employer.
No.
They were told a month after, I thought you would have been okay by now. And like how I don't know how you can have that kind of approach with somebody that's going through the worst experience of their entire life.
Absolutely. And it's like an impossible thing, really, because at the end of the day, your personal life, your life is more important than your work life. I know some people would probably disagree in certain ways.
You could have the best job in the world and it's not more important than your family and your home life.
Yeah. It's like, I appreciate that work for some people is their existence and their motivation.
Yeah, some people are really career driven and it is part of who they are,
and that's
which is
amazing.
Great. Yeah.
That is amazing. But when it comes to an experience like a loss, a huge loss in your life, nothing matters. Nothing else matters but that, and it's hard to sort of act normally, I guess, and continue with your life, because your life is never the same ever again.
Yeah. It's funny you say that though, because for me, I found it easier to act normal. So
really?
Also for a bit of background on my experience with loss, I lost my dad when I was 14 and he died in his sleep basically. So it was sudden, unexpected. Yeah. But I wasn't working at the time, but I was just about to start prep for GCSEs and all that kind of thing. And I did, I think I had 2 weeks off school and then went back again. And I just went back like everything was normal.
Wow.
And I'm not a kind of person to like bury my feelings and stuff. And I have dealt with it and I've gone through therapy and things like that in a lot later years, in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
But I think it's not the not facing the emotions. It's just easier for me to just, if somebody asks me if I'm okay, I'll go, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm all right, because it's so much easier than going into the whole saga of how you are actually feeling.
Yeah.
That's not to say to bottle up your feelings, because don't do that. But
no, I think it's from personal experience. You know, grief is such a awkward, uncomfortable topic. Yeah. No one knows how to speak about it, and I think I really realised that because I'd never lost anyone significant to me prior to my mum.
Yeah. Same. I didn't really know anybody. Only a few kids at school who've lost parents, 2 or 3, but I didn't know them personally.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you know how to speak to somebody? You know,
you don't. You don't know how to deal with it yourself. There's a lot of support in different ways, but at the same time, it's such a lonely experience.
Yeah,
because no one can tap into how you're exactly feeling, and no one's experienced the type of thing or whatever, the cause of what it is. And it's such, God, it's just so awkward.
It's complex.
No one knows how to talk
it's
about
really
it.
Complex.
And I've been avoided, and I know that I've definitely been avoided because, it's they maybe don't know how to approach it, or they don't want to upset me, and it might. And I'm not saying it comes from a place of badness. It comes from
they're probably thinking,
from them
what do I say to somebody in that situation? They don't want to say the wrong thing.
Exactly. Yeah. They don't want to upset you, but then it's at the same time. On the other hand, you want to talk about it and you want to be vulnerable. But I guess it's circumstantial of the person.
And it is an individual basis, because some people will not be okay talking about their loss.
No.
And then other people are okay about it. I feel more comfortable talking about it. And I'm the kind of person that thinks, oh God, I feel really awful because that person, somebody might have asked me, I don't know, how old's your dad, or just something dad related. And I'm like, ooh, you didn't realise. And then I'll tell them that, I lost my dad, and they're mortified because they didn't realise. And it's it's not their fault. And then I'm the one going, oh no, don't worry, it's absolutely fine. Don't be embarrassed. You didn't know. And it's weird. It is on an individual basis because some people would just point blank not talk about it.
Absolutely. As well, it comes into work. I remember it was maybe a year after I'd lost my mum, or maybe a few months after, and I remember being on a client call. And it was approaching, it must have been the year after because it was approaching Mother's Day. And it was, I do find that type of thing quite difficult. Yeah. But I remember I was in the call and it was sort of oh, what do you think it was an email or something about Mother's Day to market, promote something. And I remember I remember feeling so awkward because not only just for myself, but for how uncomfortable.
Yeah, you just know what you say next is going to turn the conversation.
It will then make them feel, and from a work perspective, you don't want to. Sometimes you don't want to bring your personal,
you don't want to bring the conversation to an end.
Exactly, because you know how awkward it's going to be and uncomfortable.
Yeah. I think a lot of brands have picked up on that though as well, because I receive a lot of emails, when you get loads of spam or you sign up for newsletters or whatever from, brands, and I get a lot of heads up, this is what we'll be sending soon. We'll be sending some, Father's Day marketing or Mother's Day. If you don't want to hear about this, let us know. And I really appreciate that companies are actually starting to realise that.
It's the acknowledgement of that could be a really difficult time.
Yeah, it could just come through at the worst possible time, couldn't it?
Yeah, that's you're having a bad day and you read an email.
What to buy your mother or father for their day or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's tough.
It is.
But it does also depend on the circumstance around the loss as well, because obviously since I started here at Superfly, I've lost 2 more relatives.
Right.
One was also terminal cancer, and the other one was a suicide, which is even more tenfold of an awkward topic to discuss for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And that's something that is very new to me as well. So I'm kind of I was chatting with a friend yesterday about this, and I said, I am coping with it because it's obviously happened very recently.
Yeah.
But it's probably because I've become accustomed to the feeling of grief, which sounds so morbid. And it's not get the tiny violin out for me and stuff. But when you've kind of experienced it already, it again is for me people are going to find this really awkward if I tell them what's happened. So
I think
how do you have that conversation? Because we talk about this in the office all the time. We are a very open office when it comes to mental health.
We absolutely are.
You've got to like break the taboo on all of those cliches, but they are actually all true. Like,
I don't think
talking
anything
about
really
it.
shocks us. And I think we appreciate that it is so important to talk about.
Yep.
You know, the things that you're going through, and it can be challenging, but I think you have to have, it is important to have trust with people you work with. I think
It does make a difference.
I think
100%.
we do have that, and it makes it so much easier.
Yeah.
Because it's, I think when you're having a bad day, I get it. You've spoken about it, and you don't. Oh well, what's wrong with her?
Yeah. You don't have that here,
you don't need to explain yourself as such, because it's like, I guess when you do talk about things like grief, like personal things that you're going through, you can easily grasp what's going on.
Yeah. And it's not like Superfly's the best place to work in the world, but I genuinely come in here and my mood lifts.
Yeah.
I can be driving to work thinking I've not got the time for it today. Like, I've had a really bad night, baby hasn't slept very well, and like I'm not feeling it. And within 10 minutes of being here, I feel completely different. And it is about that kind of culture and community, and
absolutely.
like we genuinely do have that, don't we? And if we want to talk about it, there's a space for people to talk about stuff. If you want to just stick your headphones on, that's fine too.
I think
you don't get that everywhere.
Your team helps, and your environment, and I know that we are really lucky to have that sort of environment to work in. Whereas, obviously, like we've just said, so many people who don't have that safety, I guess, and they feel
like it would be a burden to bring. Again, there's probably limits to how much of your personal life you bring to work and things like that.
Of course.
They maybe would feel like they were a burden if they were to bring it to work, because they wouldn't be met with the same empathy that they deserve.
Exactly,
in a workplace.
I think it's because obviously we come to work and there's still a job that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And we all know that it's not just...
Yeah, it's not an excuse to not have to do your work because you're going through something. But
I think
it's such a balance.
There's ways around it though, because I guess it's such a difficult thing to balance, because grief can make you feel so many different ways. You can be feeling fine one minute, and then the next you are crumbling down, crying uncontrollably, but you still might have a list of things to be doing. And
it's weird that like we can talk about this now and we're fine and we're comfortable talking about it. But like you said, it'll just come from nowhere.
Yeah.
And you're
absolutely.
like, oh, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
I need a moment. And it just that is how it works, isn't it? It'll just come out of nowhere. Just no
It does.
warning.
And the slightest thing you can be reminded of, something that's, triggers that emotion and that memory, and it can be really difficult to manage working and grieving at the same time. Yeah. For myself, like, personally, I think I spent the first year in complete disbelief of what had happened. Yeah. And I think I was hit personally the most probably after a year of my mum passing away. Yeah. Where the
Do you think you kind of block it out a little bit? I think that's what I've done, and just like
it was like the trauma of it, and the disbelief of something happening.
Because it's something so monumental. Where do you even start? So I'm just I don't really have time for that at the minute, so I'll deal with it later. And it's not even like a conscious decision; it just happens. It's just happened.
The avoidance sometimes of grief, because you are so busy, can be quite detrimental. Yep. I think there's a lot of things that I've realised over the years that I've sort of kept. I've kept to myself. I've kept pushing forward. I've kept distracting myself, and work was a big distraction. In my case, I found it a positive distraction. Yeah, because I do genuinely love my job, and I've always loved the people who I've worked with. Yeah, here, but it pushed it to a point where I've had really difficult times, the question, and what is the standard bereavement policy in the UK? So with me, I had a few weeks off, and I'd sort of talked with Nick and Charlie about coming back and doing bits of work, and it was quite staggered approach of a bit more flexible working. If I was having a bad day, I'd stay at home. But like I said, I found that my work really helped me, and I guess some people have really stressful jobs, and everyone's job is so different. Whereas
we're not too pressured here, are we? We're not pressured. That's the good thing about it.
Absolutely.
But some places, I guess, they are very high pressured and fast paced environments to work in.
But the question I popped in was, what is the standard bereavement policy in the UK? And it says, typically, compassionate leave in the UK is 3 to 5 days long for a loss of an immediate family member. Brackets, spouse, civil partner, siblings and children.
Wow. In the UK?
In the UK, yeah. And then it says 2 to 3 days for less close relationships, brackets, grandparents, grandchildren, step-parents, and 1 day for in-laws, aunts, uncles and cousins.
Wow.
And that's taken from the Breathe HR website. Yeah, so it's, I think it's a blog on there. I mean, this was one of the most shocking, I guess, pieces of information that I've read about this, because
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I mean,
I guess it's discretionary from companies.
It is discretionary
to be that as the law.
Yeah, when doing research, well, no, there's actually no law for this type of thing. So in the UK, there's no law for a set amount of time that you have for bereavement, loss, time of work.
I can't even comprehend that.
But yeah,
my head's fallen off.
It's actually
3 to 5 days when you think about it.
3 to 5 days.
The first 3 to 5 days are an actual blur.
Oh yeah.
Like you don't even know where you are or what time it is or what day it is. The first 3 to 5 days.
Exactly.
The first month.
Like I said earlier, it hit me past the year mark.
Yeah.
You know, and
that's the thing. It's not always an immediate thing, is it?
No, it's not. It's not. I'll be all right in 2 or 3 days.
Yep.
No.
Mm-hmm. But that's also not to say, like, you know, I want a month off just because I've lost someone. How does a company police that?
Yeah.
Because you might completely suppress it and be like, yeah, I'm all right, I'm fine. I'm, like autopilot, I'll go back to work again. And then it could hit you 6 months down the line.
Absolutely.
Then what happens? Oh, well, you had your compassionate leave. Like, you should be all right by now. Like,
absolutely.
You have to use your holidays.
I think I
don't know how that would work.
It's so circumstantial of
It's probably a big grey area.
I think it is, and I think there's probably no law about it, because how can you you cannot put a time limit on grief.
No.
You don't know if you're going to wake up tomorrow feeling okay, and in 6 months' time, 7, a year, 2 years, 3 years, you don't know how you're going to be.
No.
At all. Me versus how I was when it first happened. Compared to me a year later or 2 years later, 3 years later, 4 years later to now, it's been a completely different up and down journey.
Because it changes your personality, I think, as well.
Oh, I'm completely different from it.
Yeah,
I think
totally.
But I think in a good way.
Yeah.
I think it
is a growing experience as much as you would never wish it upon anybody.
No.
You just, I don't know, you kind of like it. It's all these cliches, but you do realise how short life is and how it can change in literally an instant. And I've heard that a million times over. But when you actually have it happen close to home, it's something that you would never expect would have happened.
It's true. It's like, you was 14 when you experienced it. I was 22. My mum was only 56. When she passed away, and that's
young.
That is young. You expect someone like him. It was completely out of the blue. It wasn't a hereditary thing. It just really happened out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely devastating. And you just think, life is short, because she could have had my granddad passed away last year, the end of last year, and he was the amazing age of 91, and that was my mum's dad.
Yeah.
And I always imagined my mum to, you know, be like my grandparents, well into their 80s by that time. So you think you've got all this time.
Yes.
But then you really quickly realise when something like that happens, the time is so precious and you do change and you have to change because you've had this experience that's completely turned your life upside down.
Yeah. And I think you put up with less as well.
Oh, you do. You do.
You'd think that being, you know, like emotionally impacted, you just would just let everything happen and whatever, but it's not. You actually put up these boundaries and go, nah, I can't.
Yeah.
I can't deal with that.
Absolutely.
I'm not dealing with this.
Your perspective of everything completely changes, you know, even, you know, just bringing it back to work. I think from this experience, if I really didn't enjoy my job, I wouldn't have still been here.
No, not at all. No.
Because
why would you stay somewhere that makes you unhappy?
Absolutely. Nothing is worth
when life
that
is
unhappiness.
So short.
Yeah.
And you don't know. You've got to be supported, haven't you? But there's big changes that need to be made, you know. And I think I've seen less empathy with bigger companies. Yes. I do think, you know, the smaller the company, you do feel that kind of family community side of things, whereas you don't get that with a large company. Yeah. Is that their fault? Probably not, because they've maybe got thousands of employees.
That's the thing. It's
but that
hard
still
to...
that's not the person who's feeling the loss and the grief. Absolutely. That's not their fault because they work for, you know, a global organisation and they don't feel that same connection.
I guess there's no real answer to the problem because everyone's experience is so different and how their emotions play into it. Yeah. You just it's so individual. Yeah. Personal. It's such a personal experience. Yeah. But yeah, I've heard stories of people losing immediate family, for instance, and unfortunately their managers have had no sympathy, empathy, whatever
it's
the
like
word
it's an inconvenience, isn't it?
Yeah, it is an inconvenience because you're not here doing the job that you should be doing to the standard you should be doing. Yep. But at the end of the day, every single person at some point in their life will experience a huge loss. Yep. You know, and
we don't control when that happens either, do we?
You never know. You could be young, you could be older. If you're older, it's just so different.
Because it doesn't matter at what age you lose someone. If you've never lost somebody and you get to 50, it's still going to hit you like a ton of bricks.
Absolutely, because it's an experience you've never experienced.
It's a first.
You've never had it.
Yeah, and even if it's not first, like in my instance, for example, I've had 3 big losses. It still isn't any easier, but you do have that accustomed feeling of, right, okay, I know what's going to happen here, I know how it's going to go. But that's why it's so important to talk about it and, you know, to kind of rid the stigma of therapy and things. Absolutely. Like we talk about this, don't we? Like in America, it's like going and having a nail appointment, going to a therapy session, and it's not really like that in the UK yet.
I think it's getting there. It's slowly coming over. I think I know more people now than I've ever known to have therapy. Yeah. And I think as well, like, thank God, me personally, you know, sort of reached out and got therapy because I don't know how I'd have functioned mentally, emotionally without it. I'm not in it at the moment, but I've had quite a few rounds of it over the years. I have. Yeah. And it's massively helped me, you know, continue to have my life on the track that I'm wanting it to go in.
And it's not something to be afraid of, is it, either?
No, absolutely.
I think a lot of people are frightened of it because they think they're going to be called out on, you know, well, you're not dealing with things in this way or you're enabling this behaviour or whatever. But it genuinely is life-changing. I've said this loads of times. Like, it has changed my life for sure. Even just to recognise, and it's not all about, like, recognising your own flaws or anything like that, but it's just to recognise the way that you can change your actions. If you can't change a situation, which most of the time, you know, we can't change certain situations, you do benefit from having, you know, the advice from a professional.
Absolutely.
Who can speak to someone that is feeling, you know, maybe vulnerable and needs that support.
It's so important, and I think it is an essential because you don't know how to process things.
No. But I even think that people that haven't had any grief or loss, they would still massively benefit from therapy.
Everyone would benefit from it.
Everybody.
It should
be none of this national service. Everyone gets therapy.
Yeah.
Like that should be a given, a law. Like this will improve you. You don't know what's going to come up, but guaranteed if you talk about it, or even if you go to a few sessions, like I would have the odd session where I'd think, well, I haven't really got anything to talk about.
Yeah.
Don't know. I don't really
You'll
really
always
need this
find
session.
something there.
And then that would be the best session. Yeah, it would just, something would come out and I'd be like, God, I didn't even realise that was stored back there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And afterwards, it was like a really bizarre, surreal, subdued experience and this weird feeling that I was like, I just literally felt like this was like my first round 2 years ago. I had shed a literal weight from my shoulders.
Yeah.
It was like, I actually feel lighter. The less of the burden
crazy,
of the emotions.
Isn't it? How just letting it out, speaking about it.
Yeah.
And I think bringing it back into work, talking, if you was sort of encouraged by your workplace and allowed the time to have counselling.
Which we do get that, don't we, to be fair.
Yeah. I mean, these sessions that I had, the counsellors work typically 9 to 5 like we do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so sometimes it's hard to fit it in, isn't it?
Yeah, Monday to Friday. So you're like, I need the time to do that. And luckily, Nick was always really supportive of that and allowed me to have that time, to prepare myself before it, to have the session and then a bit of time after.
Yeah, because you do need time in advance.
And that has helped me so much. I had my time to talk things through, and then I could, get myself back into work.
Yeah, you kind of compartmentalise a little bit afterwards, don't you?
Yeah.
And like I would always jot down like 2 pages of notes after my session because I had to do it there and then.
Yeah.
And then, okay, right, I'll process it later, but I've written it down. Like when you have a dream and you wake up and think, I've got to write it down now because I forget everything that happened in this dream. Yeah, I would do that. I've got pages and pages from my therapy sessions and like, it's good to look back on them and kind of read them on reflection as to like how you were feeling at the time or things that you said you'd set yourself, as a goal to try and, okay, I'm going to try and work on that part of my life at this, in the next few weeks, and then look back and think, I actually did take something away from that. You might not feel like it at the time, but it's so helpful.
It is. It's so important. Everyone should get therapy.
Yeah, they should. Get therapy. Many therapists available.
Your local therapist. Yeah.
Have you got any other bits?
Let me just have a look.
I only had a few brief bits to mention, really. Have you got any more stats? Stats are good.
They are, but it's quite difficult to find anything online, to be honest, because there isn't a lot about it. And it's so funny that
it's like I said earlier, natural to happen in life.
Everyone's going to die.
Yeah. Like it's not discussed.
Everyone's going to die and everyone's going to lose someone you absolutely love and adore. So there's just not, there's not tons about it. I think as well because there's not a lot of ruling around it. It is all very dependent on the company that you work for. It is. And
I'm just thinking what advice could we give to someone that maybe works for a bigger company or just a company in general that doesn't have concrete policies in place for, compassionate leave and things like that. I just think the 5 days thing, you should be able to challenge that. 3 to 5 days.
Absolutely. I think grief, you could be, like I've said, everyone is so different. Yeah. And there's some people deal with it much better than other people. Not better, better's the wrong word, but differently to other people. Some people physically
on the surface can cover it up a bit more. Yeah,
some people can go into autopilit, like you say.
I do.
They can drive themselves to work without even...
I've
done that. I've done that,
Yeah.
You come in, you do your job, you go home, you grieve at home in your privacy. Yeah. But then there's other people who it's completely debilitating.
Yes.
They can't get out of bed. They can't get off the ground.
Yep. Definitely.
And
absolutely. Everyone is so different.
What are you meant to do in that situation,
Yeah, definitely not bury it. And, it's awful to think that people could bury it because they don't want to inconvenience their employer.
Oh, I bet so many people... I feel like as much as as much as Nick and Charlie have been so supportive of me, you do feel like that. I did. I've had it where
absolutely.
I thought, I really don't want to come into work today. I'm feeling really sad and really down and really bad. But then I'm like, but no, I need to go in. Like part of me is like, that's a positive thing because you're still getting yourself up and you're still trying to like have your life and go to work. Yeah. But then you do think, I don't want to let him down because I've already had a few days off last week because I felt really bad as well. And it's mad, isn't it?
It's something that's probably kind of like intrinsically in our brains to think, don't let your employer down. Because they couldn't be more supportive here.
Absolutely.
But yet when I lost my auntie not so long ago and then my uncle 4 weeks later, I was like, oh my God, this is like it is inconvenient for work. They're going to think of me. Yeah, like they're going to think, oh, we're not going to get the employee that we thought we would get because I'm still relatively new here. And like,
similar thing happening there with us.
Like reflection on Nick and Charlie as managers at all. They could not be more supportive. It was just me in my head thinking, well, this isn't good timing. And again, when is a good time to lose somebody?
Worth ethic, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
Because
definitely. Because you don't want to let people down. Yeah. Absolutely.
You care about
you don't want them to think, oh, right, okay, well, she's going to be, hands off the ball or whatever the saying is. She's not going to be paying attention like she would have been. And they don't think that. They've never said that. They've been so supportive of me and, just basically told me to just turn up if you're having a bad day. Just, come in the office and have a cuppa and sit with us. And like, I haven't had too many wobbles during work, but I do feel like if I did, it would be totally fine.
It would be.
And it's a shame, we've all worked places where we think I wouldn't have had the same reaction there.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't know how people solve that with their employer.
I think overall, companies, managers need to, I guess, if a company, if a what am I trying to say? If a manager has no compassion towards a personal situation, they need to change.
Yeah, and also, what other things do they not support you on? That was my thought. It's I know you don't know this when you start a role, but if it's important to read the small print on your contract and things like that. And if there's things like not much compassionate leave or, things that are really important to an employee, where else are there going to be red flags within an employer?
I bet so many people have been caught out by that.
Yeah. People probably don't read contracts that clearly in terms of like, well, I'm going to need that. Like,
yeah, absolutely. And life happens.
Yeah.
Life happens when you least expect it.
It does.
And the worst thing ever could happen. And you need that support from your employer. Yeah.
And you're as unprepared for it as your employer is. Your employer might be scrambling around thinking, oh God, like they're going to be off for a month now. How are we going to cover staffing and stuff? But you're not prepared for it either when that thing happens.
It's quite an impossible situation.
Yeah, it is.
I guess that's why there is no government ruling.
Yes. There's no solid line to be drawn in it, is there?
It's impossible to do so. How can you put a time frame on it? How can you put expectations on grief and work and how you're going to do it? At the end of the day, you just have to turn up to work and hope for the best and hope you're supported.
Yeah, and choose your employer wisely.
Absolutely.
Genuinely, like read the small print.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's about it.
Yeah.